Chapter 14, Midnight Furnace. The inner ring of the outpost was a furnace in every sense. Smoke curled in thick plumes from scorched floors, and the glow of thermite charges, painting corridors in flickering orange. The smell of molten metal, dust, and alien ichor clung to the walls, heavy in the air. The survivors moved like shadows along the narrow walkways, weapons slung, muscles coiled and ready. Every breath was a labor, every heartbeat a drum counting down the seconds until impact. Captain Reeve crouched behind a reinforced blast wall, scanning the junction of two corridors with thermal optics. The sensors had gone silent an hour ago, and he knew better than to trust the stillness. The first wave had battered the outer wire, and the creatures were relentless. Now they were probing every choke point, testing, adjusting, reshaping their assault in real time. "They're everywhere," murmured Mara, crouched beside him. Her hands flew over the tablet, toggling schematics and feeding live thermal readings. Eastern Tower's been partially overrun. They're in the stairwell now, working their way up. Reeve nodded. "We funnel them. Hold the corridor. Lennox with me. Mara, coordinate fallback points. Make sure anyone who falls back has cover fire." Lennox dropped beside him, smearing dust and grime across his face for camouflage. "Funnel, shoot, repeat. Got it. One thing though, do we really have enough ammo for this?" His voice was rough from smoke and adrenaline, but he managed a grin. "Because I swear we'll run dry very fast." "Make every shot count," Reeve said, sweeping the corridor with his weapon. "One shot wasted is a life gone." The first breach came with the sound of metal groaning, a sound that made Reeve's stomach tighten. A creature had lifted a grated section of floor, dropping into the passageway with a wet, deliberate thud. Its 6 legs scuttled over debris, its carapace glinting in the dim light. It paused, testing the corridor for heat signatures and human scent. Lennox fired first, a burst of tracer rounds lighting the gloom. Sparks and shards of chitin flew as the creature's forelegs struck the floor, claws scraping. Reeve followed, emptying a magazine into the soft joint under its plates. The creature collapsed, convulsing, and then another emerged, smaller, faster, darting in from the side corridor. The corridor became a river of fire and steel. The survivors' rifles cracked and flared. The creatures moved like a tide, not one but many, adjusting to suppressive fire, coordinating instinctively. Reeve shot, ducked, fired again. Lennox rolled past, smacking a creature aside with the butt of his rifle before firing again. Mara's voice came over the comms, calm and precise. "Secondary barricade at 70%. Prepare fallback to corridor Delta 3. Inside Delta 3, the fight became hand-to-hand. A hulking creature swung a foreleg, sending a crate of ammo tumbling. Reeve dove, feeling the talons graze his shoulder. He twisted, braced, and drove the muzzle of his rifle into the creature's chest plate. Sparks sprayed, the creature shrieked, and then staggered back, only to lunge again. Lennox came from above, smashing a makeshift baton into its joint before finishing it with a short burst. Mara arrived moments later, throwing a grenade into a side passage where a smaller pack tried to flank them. The explosion rocked the corridor, smoke and flame whipping through the narrow space. The survivors coughed, blinded, but held their positions, moving bodies out of the blast radius and checking ammo. "Status!" Reeve shouted. "2 down, 4 wounded but conscious," Mara said. "Fallback route secured. Corridor Delta 4 compromised. We'll need to seal it or we lose the inner ring." "Then seal it," Reeve said. "Set charges and pull back to the crosswalk. Make it a death trap." The creatures adapted again. They didn't charge. They tested. One slipped under the thermite glassing, another climbed a service shaft, finding soft points in the metal and concrete. Reeve and Lennox moved as a unit, shooting, slamming, pushing back against the tide. Mara coordinated from above, toggling lights, opening and closing fire doors remotely, forcing the creatures into kill zones the survivors had prepared with sweat and blood. At one point, Lennox went down, a creature's forearm slicing into his leg. Reeve dove, dragging him behind cover as claws grazed their shoulders. Mara opened fire with a turret, mowing down the attackers while Reeve applied a tourniquet. Lennox cursed and smiled despite the pain. "Next time," he gasped. "I get first pick." "Focus on surviving, not jokes," Reeve said, eyes scanning the smoke for the next threat. The fight stretched for hours. The inner ring became a crucible. Walls scorched black, floors glassed from thermite charges, turrets jammed or overheated, corridors filled with smoke and the scent of burned chitin. Every breach forced a counterattack. Every minor victory bled into exhaustion and loss. Reeve found himself in the communications room, holding the door as a pair of creatures tried to ram through. He fired, reloaded, fired again. The creatures recoiled only to surge again, testing every weak spot. Lennox joined him, dragging a fallen soldier out of the blast radius, and then they turned to face the next wave, shoulder to shoulder. Mara coordinated the fallback lines, directing survivors to secondary barricades, deploying incendiary traps that turned corridors into walls of flame. At one point, a creature pressed against a reinforced door, shaking it, claws scraping, teeth gnashing. Reeve planted a satchel charge. 3, 2, 1. The explosion rocked the corridor, sending the attacker flying and leaving the door melted and twisted. The survivors barely had time to step back before another surged in. Every engagement was a question of inches. Every breath, a gamble. Every shot, a prayer. By the small hours before dawn, the inner ring had held, but at terrible cost. The survivors were battered, bleeding, their armor scorched and dented. The corridors reeked of sweat, blood, and alien ichor. The creatures had tested every trap, every fallback, every human nerve. Yet still the survivors had held, Reeve, Mara, Lennox at the center of it all, driving every action, every order, every measure of hope. They paused briefly, arms braced against walls, faces blackened and torn, breathing in the tang of smoke and metal. Outside, through the flickering floodlights, the alien shapes regrouped beyond the inner wall. They were patient, intelligent, and relentless. And yet they had not broken through. Not yet. Reeve wiped soot from his eyes, looking over the survivors huddled in secondary positions. "One more push, and then we wait," he said. "We hold until daylight, and we survive." Lennox nodded, grim and silent. Survive, or die trying. Same difference. Mara checked the remaining charges and tripwires. "Everything's ready," she said. "Inner ring's solid. We've bought ourselves the night. Now we brace for what comes next." The creatures were out there, waiting, calculating. The survivors were in position, traps set, lines of fire prepared. The outpost held its breath, and for the first time in hours, the survivors allowed themselves a fraction of stillness. The furnace of midnight had burned through them, tested every nerve, and left them raw. Yet, against all odds, the inner ring stood, and still, dawn was coming. There is always a story to be told out here in the frontier, as long as there is someone to listen, like, and subscribe, and join us again for more.